Welcome to Conversations on Consent by Consent Talk. My name is Paige Clark. I'm one of the hosts.
My name is Alex. I am also one of the hosts and co-founders of Consent Talk.
Yes, and I'm Simani. I'm also one of the co-founders. Paige is a co-founder. The three of us all came together and really just wanted to create a space for open dialogue about all of the different nuances and topics that come up when we talk about consent. And we're excited to welcome you into this space.
Yeah, we've had many FaceTimes over the last probably what, 6 to 8 months has it been?
Eight
It's been
plus months
eight
now.
months.
When we have been just trying so hard to stay on task, but these conversations just take us to so many places. And so we figured why not turn it into a podcast and invite you all to listen in and join the conversation in with us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
essentially, we love to yap about this stuff, and we would love for y'all to A, listen and resonate with the yap, but also start conversations yourself.
The goal is just to be casual. This is basically our FaceTime call recorded for everybody else to hear. We're all very new to this, so bear with us as we get our bearing. But today we want to talk a little bit about Denim Day, which is today, if you're listening to this the day it came out.
Yeah, let's talk about Denim Day. It's that one court case where basically this woman said that she had survived this occurrence of sexual violence. I believe it was a rape, and the judge overturned it. And overturned might not be the right word. The judge basically said that you can't take your jeans off by yourself, or like someone else couldn't have taken their jeans off. Like you had to be a part of that.
So it was the Italian Supreme Court, and they actually overturned a rape conviction that was gotten
Mhm.
for her case because they said that her jeans were so tight that she would have had to help the perpetrator take them off, and by doing that, she was consenting.
And that's
And
insane.
so, can we break that down a little bit? So if she helped the perpetrator take her own jeans off, why is that
Because it's
not
not
consent?
a yes.
Did she ever say yes? Yeah. Was there ever like a verbal, explicit yes in this case?
It also,
No,
you
no,
can
there
be
was not.
coerced into taking your
Are you
Yeah.
jeans
saying that
off.
consent requires a verbal yes?
Wait, yes. Because the definition of consent essentially is the clear, explicit use of a yes and not the absence of a no. And that's in relevance to any kind of sexual activity, whether it's something as first base, third base, or any base outside of that, right? And so in this case, like if she's not verbally saying yes, or if she's coerced into saying some kind of thing, or coerced into taking her clothes off, since when have clothes ever been permission to sexual activity?
She was 18 and it was her 45-year-old driving instructor, and he had driven her to an isolated location.
Mhm.
So she didn't know that he didn't have a gun or that her life wasn't in risk. And I think that
Like,
that also brings up a different conversation, which is that,
yeah.
like, women are taught to stay alive. And so it's like you're going to try to stay alive. That's going to be your priority.
Women or men, if you're in a place where you're fighting for your survival, or you're like, am I even gonna like see what happens next? Like, of course you're gonna be coerced essentially. You're not fully informed of what's going on here, right? You have no information. You're just like, am I gonna survive or am I not? And part of consent is information. It's part of like the voice model, and I stands for informed. The voice model, if anyone wants to tag on.
The voice model. So, voice is an acronym that we helped put together to make it easy to define what consent is. So, V is for voluntary, O is for ongoing, I is for informed, C is for clear, and E is for enthusiastic.
Voluntary, for example, is that it's freely given. You can say no if you want, and that there's nobody pressuring you to say a certain thing, to say yes. It's freely given. It's coming from your own desire to do
Mhm.
something or not do something.
And then ongoing is throughout the entirety of the activity, you have the ability to say yes or no at any point at any time. Say you're partway through something that you consented to, and all of a sudden you're not feeling it, you're not in the right headspace to feel it, whatever it is, you can say no for any reason, and that consent can still be accepted if you say no later on in the activity. So it is ongoing throughout all of it.
Informed consent is a little bit more complex, but it really makes sure that you're covering sexual health. So if somebody has an STD or STI, that they are letting you know in advance of sexual activity, that protection's being discussed and what forms of birth control are being discussed, and making sure that you kind of have the same expectations of what it is, the power dynamics are balanced.
So also we would say informed goes into the territory of the state of mind that you're in, and can you be informed in a certain state of mind, right? So if somebody is heavily intoxicated, they can't be informed. If somebody is underage, they can't be informed. So there's certain situations where someone just simply cannot be informed on the implications of the act that is, said to occur. And so always making sure that both parties are in a headspace where they can, be informed of all the risks and what is going to go into the act that they're consenting to, and also making sure that they're an adult who has, enough lived experience to understand what consent actually is as well.
I would say clear is, I mean, all parts of voice are nuanced, but clear is probably the most straightforward. Is it a clear yes? Did the word yes or yeah or any of those come into play? Or was it just the absence of a no, right? Like was it kind of like a wishy-washy moment? You want to think about how someone is saying it, what information they have, and understand in the moment, are they very clearly consenting and saying yes to whatever activity is presented before them? Or are they saying no? Or are they just kind of sort of like maybe thinking about it? If they're thinking about it, open up a conversation, right? If they say no, that still can warrant a conversation, but that should be respected as a no.
I think clear is like the perfect segue into enthusiastic, because one of the best ways to tell if something is clear is if someone is very enthusiastically saying yes. It's not a maybe, it's not a head nod, it's not like a just kind of passive action, it's
It's a hell
enthusiastic. So that
yeah.
means that it's a hell yeah, exactly. So always looking for an enthusiastic yes. It's not just, someone that's sure, like that's not a yes. It should be like Paige said, a hell yes.
Well, I mean, let's take all of that and go back to Denim Day, right? And the case that started it all. I feel like all five of those voluntary, ongoing, informed, clear, enthusiastic, there is like no way in which I see this case having all five of these fulfilled. If even one of them isn't fulfilled, that is not consent,
Well, and
right?
also I think in this case none of them are fulfilled, arguably.
Of course.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, yeah, from there, a lot of folks from there rallied together because it is absurd that the reason that a woman is denied the justice for a case where she had no information, she had to do what she needed to do, or was coerced into doing so, or was completely violated. And because she was wearing these jeans that was essentially told, nope, you were a part of this. You consented because you're wearing jeans.
Jeans can't ask for consent. Jeans can't talk.
Sorry. But also, so what happened was the female members of the Italian parliament all wore denim in protest, and that's how it started. And so now, in recognition of this case, but also in recognition of all survivors and in recognition of the fact that what you're wearing does not matter, people wear jeans on the last Wednesday of April to recognize survivors, show their support, and show that it does
Mhm.
not
And I
matter
think that
what you're
extends
wearing.
beyond just clothing too. Another topic would be maybe social media and what someone chooses to post on their social media. That does not give consent. There's so many things that we could go into that are not consent, that people, like what you're wearing, what you're posting, how you talk. If you're flirting is not consent. Like the list goes on and on.
It can be really overwhelming if this is your first time having these kinds of conversations or your first time even interacting with like consent and all its different nuances and things. And I think the only way to really get through educating yourself about it is to have discussions, have conversation, open the dialogue up between like yourself and partnered, yourself and friends. Like I think that takes away so much of like the stigmas that go along with consent and so much of the awkwardness that sometimes accompanies consent because it can be awkward to, have these conversations, to ask for consent continuously if it's your first couple of times doing so. But it goes a really long way. Think of it this way, like if someone is to knock on your door, they're essentially asking for consent to come into your room. And you have the ability to say yes or no. And for whatever reason, if you say yes or no, they're going to respect that answer, right? I'm not saying we humans are the exact same as knocking on a door and entering, but the principle of consent is the same in this case, right? It's asking for permission. It's asking, can I do this activity? Are you comfortable with this activity? And then move forward from there. And all you can do is open the conversation and just start from there.
I completely agree. I think too that the language that we use around it and the expectations that we've put on it as kind of a society and on these conversations, I think are really, a big part of why we've ended up in a situation where sexual assault is such a prevalent issue is because we're only teaching certain people about it, we're only teaching certain groups about it. And by we, I mean the big collective we being the world, life in America as a teenager. And so I think, yeah, I think there's a lot that we just kind of want to talk about.
I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a really interesting conversation to be had about the language we use around consent and
Mm-hmm.
how in our language there isn't really a mutual verb that exists that works well when talking about sex. Like if you think about we danced, we talked, we argued, those all sound natural, but we sexed does not. And a lot of the time it's like, oh, did you fuck her? Did you have sex with her? It's an action verb against someone. There's one person that's doing an action against another. It's not a mutual event that's occurring. And I think just the way that the language is shaped around that, that has an implication on how we view consent, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that it feeds into this idea that like women have not really had the space or the autonomy or the ability to talk about like desiring sex for a long time. It's a much newer concept. Like I know like my mom talks a lot about like Madonna and like coming out as someone who was like a woman who proudly wanted to have sex. We'd never seen that before. Obviously, I think there's probably places in the world where people were seeing that, but from the mainstream popular media, like this is a very new thing for women to be able to openly say, like, I would like to go get laid. I would like to go have sex. And I think that there's so much of how we operate around sex that just isn't reflective of the fact that, like, women can also want it.
There's two things I want to bring up. A, the modern Sabrina Carpenter and all of her songs. I think there's been a lot of discourse after Sabrina Cella, and I'm not gonna sway either which way on like who's right and who's not, but I will say she's really open about her as a woman in this world and what she desires, and she just I think brings up sex in such a positive way for women compared to some male counterparts that are in the music industry. And I think that is a reason that she is so well loved. I personally don't listen to so many of her songs, but the ones I do listen to are so much fun, I will say. It's such a nice way to like remove a lot of those stigmas of like being a wanting desire, sharing your desires, and like being a woman in those spaces. And the other thing I wanted to bring up is like this goes to power, like in power imbalances. Like when Alex was like, "Oh, did you fuck her?" And it's an act that's like being done to someone else, that there's a huge power imbalance between like this person and this person. If you do this to this person, you have the power over them. And it's just so interesting because consent really is like are like a willingness to like share the power in the act of sex, not one person over the other. And obviously there's nuances to that as well, but there's a lot of trust in it also.
I think a perfect example that encapsulates that is the analogy that we also commonly use of baseball for sex, right? And so
Mm.
when you think about it, there's one hitter, right? And there's a defense, which is the team that's playing the field. And so we describe the hitter is the hitter going to get to first base, to second base, to third base, or score. And the whole time that is something that the, defending team is defending against. the defensive team is not actively pursuing being scored on, right? And so the whole way that that is even, framed as like, is the man, and it's the man who is he going to hit a home run? Is he going to score on the defensive team, or is the defensive team going to give up a run? And so that's something that we have all used. There is not a single person, I'm convinced, that hasn't used baseball for
Earlier, I literally used that
literally
earlier. What do you
thought
mean
of
you're
using
connecting
that
all
minute
the?
ago.
No, I'm not even connecting the dots. You're connecting the bases.
Oh my god.
ingrained it is in our language. It's just so hardwired into us to think of it as sex is something that a woman is giving up and a man is
That is
pursuing. It's not a mutual, not a dance that's occurring, or two people cooking a meal together. It's an act of the
yeah.
man pursuing and taking something, which is, I think, a very damaging perspective that we all have so deeply ingrained into American culture and our language.
There
Mhm.
was this TikTok that Paige you sent to us of the virginity question. It's something that a woman gives up, but I feel like, of course, it's a huge deal for men in a lot of cases. I will say, a lot of partners I've been with that was their first time, like it was so important to them. But it's not necessarily talked about in the greater context of things as, oh my God, you lost your
Well,
virginity,
it's
like blah
also
blah blah.
called like being broken in a lot of different cultures. Like, you've been broken, you've popped the cherry, you can't go back. Like,
Pop your
once it's
cherry.
popped, it's popped. Like, it's like, did either of you watch Jane the Virgin? When the grandmother like talks like the flower, and she's like, once you've crumpled the flower, you can never get it back to
Cannot.
what it is. But like, it's one of those things that like, for a girl, once you've lost it, it's
Hush.
gone. And that part of it, and the TikTok I sent that I found kind of entertaining was like saying it's like powerful enough to change a woman. I think that it is just so ingrained into the many different levels of conversation that we have. And like the baseball analogy, I'm still mind blown over that because I've never thought about that. And yes, I've also used that analogy
Mhm.
numerous
We all
occasions in my
have.
life.
I mean, let's take it to another part of pop culture and media. Bridgerton, right? It was such a huge, like, I feel like so many people tuned into it at one point or another in its running so far. And over again, it's like the men in that series can do whatever they want. They can be with whomever they want. They can have as many mistresses that they want, etc. They can do whatever they want before marriage. But a woman is ruined if she even kisses a man before marriage, let alone like go even further. If she kisses a man, that is removing whatever value she has on this marriage market. And of course, for the rich folks of Bridgerton and the series and the cast, marriage is everything, which then further leads to like babies. And what do you need to do to make babies?
No, but I think in season one of that show in particular, like the guys all had different affairs and different, you would see Anthony, with his mistress, and then Anthony was willing to kill his best friend because he kissed his sister and like sacrificed her honor. And that show also has some weird violations of consent with the fact that she didn't know what sex was going into the marriage, and then she also, yeah.
Yeah, there was some. I think that is such a testament though, because I have heard over and over again, would you want this to happen to your sisters, your mothers, your partners, things like that, like sexual assault, sexual violence, or anything that falls on that spectrum? Would you want it to happen to a woman that you're close to in your own life
Always.
that's like a family member, right? And the answer is pretty much no. A lot of guys will answer absolutely not. But then, say they're a witness, or say they watch their friend do it and stand by and say nothing. Say they themselves are a perpetrator, but it's not someone that's like actively in their life. Like it's just a very nuanced conversation. I think Bridgerton points that out a little bit because Anthony was fine doing whatever he wanted with other people, but the minute his sister does it, that's an issue.
Well, and I think too, you see a lot of different things where when men have daughters, where they like are suddenly terrified. And it's very interesting. Like someone that I'm close to, who's like a family friend, who's an older man who has a 18-year-old daughter, is like, yeah, I'm very ashamed to admit that I didn't care about any of this until I had my daughter, and now I'm terrified of everything, and I want to pay more attention. And I think though that like that's a very real experience. He grew up with three brothers. Obviously he has a mother, but I don't think people see their mothers in like the same capacity that they see like their little sister in. It's just an interesting experience. I think that's why having conversations like this that are not judgy either, because Everybody has a different background. Like, everyone has different experiences that shape their belief systems. A lot of people don't ever have these conversations in their lives. You can always start. Doesn't matter if you're 30, doesn't matter if you're 40. Like, you can always start having a conversation and bettering yourself.
I kind of want to talk a little bit more about the framework of viewing sex as an action done by one person onto another, and why that is such a dangerous perspective that we have kind of ingrained into the language that we use around consent. Um, Specifically, I think that viewing it as something that's done to someone makes the goal basically to achieve that action on someone rather than for both parties to agree to do something together for it to be a mutually beneficial experience for both people. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that, one of the things that I thought about with this too is that, like, in a lot of the media that you see where they do show active consent being shown, um, but generally it's only asked for by the male partner. And I think that that is a very interesting thing. And I'd never really thought about it that much before, because I do think that there is a power dynamic to that. But I think
Hmm.
also doesn't mean that consent shouldn't be asked the other way. The check in should be happening on both sides of it.
Yeah, it seems like it's so ingrained that it's the man that has to do the asking. And like, what do you think of that? Is that something that is harmful, that we don't really have, an expectation where it's a conversation? It's more one person asking the other.
Usually, I think things start progressing without a conversation, right? You get into kissing and then it gets a little steamy
Someone's shirt comes off, la da da. Yeah.
and I don't think there's like a specific point along which where you like specifically stop and have this conversation, but I think there comes to be a slight pause usually in these situations where someone can kind of be like, "Hey, where do you want to go with this?" Right? Like let's talk about this before we go any further. That is always a really easy way of opening up that conversation and being like, "What are your thoughts? Where is your head at? And what are you comfortable with doing?" And I think I've seen that be a really like low pressure way for not only the partner or partners, but like myself, and be
Hmm.
like, what do I actually want out of this, right? Like sometimes I'm not feeling like I want to go all the way. And I feel like that always is like a good communication barrier because it doesn't like make things awkward in any way, shape, or form. It's just you guys sharing your expectations with each other.
I
And I
mean,
think
Hmm.
yeah,
like, that's the easiest way sometimes.
I think too, if you have a clear expectation of what you want going into it, like, I've had a couple situations where I've been seeing someone I had previously been with that I hadn't seen in a while, and we were, getting steamy, whatever. And I would just say, like, we're not having sex tonight. Like, I don't want to.
Hmm.
And if the response is anything but okay, then we have an issue. In those types of situations, just because you've already had sex doesn't mean that you're automatically doing that again.
Hmm.
I think there also can be something said though. Sometimes people change their minds, whether that means they want to say yes later on or if they said yes initially and want to say no later on. I think like both sides of that spectrum have to be like respected. I'm going to bring up a case like say I'm like I don't want to have sex tonight. We can do whatever else, but I just don't feel like doing that. And the person's like, "Are you sure?" Or like later on in the night I'd like change my mind, right? That does not mean that the next time I also want to be having my mind changed if I want to say I don't want to have something. That still needs to be respected each time. I think a lot of times we as humans want to make patterns, right? We want to be like, okay, if this happened once, then I can do this and it'll happen again. But
Hmm.
sex is not a pattern. Sex is something that every occurrence is individually its own, and it's so unique to each person and that's taking a part of it that like it needs to be respected as its own individual experience every time regardless of who is having it with who.
That's why I feel like it might be even helpful to think of consent as an ongoing conversation, or consent is that you've created a space for an ongoing conversation,
Mhm.
rather than if you just look at consent as like a yes, then you might be, not considering that you are focusing so hard on, if you're a man and you're like, I need to get consent from this girl before I proceed, that
Mhm.
might blind you from actually seeing how she's feeling in the situation, because you might unknowingly be putting pressure on that yes if that's what you're just listening for. So instead of looking at it as, like you said, a binary or something that could be reduced into a pattern, like, it's just about, I feel like creating a space for there to be a conversation that can be ever changing and ongoing between you and your partner.
Well, and I think too, even in more casual situations, we call it a conversation, and it is a conversation. It can be longer, but it can also be really simple. Like just stopping at some point and saying, like, hey, I know XYZ, like, seems like things are going a certain way, but I just want to make sure, like, this is what you want to do. Are we both good with this? And if the answer is yes, then yes, it happens. And if the answer is no, then it's like, no, but like we could do these other things, or no, actually, like I think I'm like, kind of over this, want to do something else completely. And
Mhm.
and I think that like it can just be like a quick, you know, minute check-in sometimes. I think a concern that like I've seen people bring up is like, but it's not sexy to like stop and be like, are we sure we want to do this? Like, how are you feeling? Da da da. Like it ruins the
That's
moment. I'm like,
actually
but
like the sexiest thing ever. I'm not
I
even
know,
gonna lie.
Uh-huh.
I know,
Like that is like the best part of it, I think.
yeah.
Because it like
I
grounds
really
you.
appreciate
Like,
when someone
yeah.
makes sure that I'm feeling good, personally.
Yeah, but I also wanted to like I think so far we've kind of oriented this in like a very like heterosexual frame. The experience of asking for consent is not unique to heterosexual relationships whatsoever. I think a lot of the queer population also really struggles with having some of these conversations because they've had their own experiences with having to share their sexualities with other folks, partners or friends or relationships alike. And I would say there's more stigma sometimes for same sex partners or things like that. And I think we need to be like really, really clear that like this conversation can apply to any kind of relationship at any time. Anytime you're
Absolutely.
about to move forward in a physical or even emotional activity that is a little bit out of, I would say, the normal comfort zone of like a friendship, that is a conversation that can occur to
Yep.
have consent, right? And I think like I just really want to be super honest for my queer friends out there that it is so hard sometimes to pause something that you're already feeling in your own head about, right? I think there's so much that can be said to like they're like, oh, is this gonna happen? The nervousness, the butterflies, all of that. And I think that plays a huge role in like not like the awkwardness that comes with asking for consent. And like the most you can do is just say like, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go with this? How are you feeling about this? If something that's really important to you is like knowing if it's gonna happen again, asking, hey, like, is this something that we're gonna keep doing? Because sometimes if people find out that it's like a one night stand, they don't want to have sex. They maybe want to do some other things, but like all of those kind of go into the factor of information, and information is for everyone of any type of partner.
As someone who's queer and dates men and women, at least for me, there was like a different level of nervousness exploring sexuality with women. And I think that it was just that like, I knew what happened in sex with a man, and like I didn't know what was going to happen in sex with a woman. And I think though that with that, like it was even more important that we were both checking in with each other. And so I think just being conscious of people's levels of comfort in a situation, regardless of whether that comfort comes from their experiences, previous experiences doing stuff, or if it's based on trauma or their overall well being. Like in any situation, man or
Mhm.
woman, heteronormative, two guys, two girls, genderqueer, non-binary, multiple people, who cares? Like just making sure that people are comfortable, and like that it's
Mhm.
also that you're creating a space where the comfort is there too, where you can say, hey, like let's slow down for a sec, what are we doing here? It all to me comes back to like comfort and feeling like safe in
Mhm.
like the environment to be able to say I can say something without it killing the mood, or feeling like I'm not allowed to speak up here.
Mhm.
I feel like another way to add a level of comfort is to suggest alternatives and to put those on the table, so that the other person maybe doesn't have to. And just put them out there as, basically an easy way to say, hey, we don't have to be doing this. We could just watch a movie if you're not feeling it. Like making it so that there's easy outs just in case that, feeling bubbles up in someone, but they don't have the words
Mhm.
to say something like clearly, like, no, I don't want to keep doing this. Just having those easy outs, I think, makes people
Yeah.
feel more comfortable and creates a space where it's just easier and more natural to de-escalate if that's what people are feeling.
Some of the the best times I've had are when my partner literally is like, "Hey, if at any point you're like not feeling it, like no matter what's going on, just like let me know." And that for someone with like some health issues, some mental health issues, that can go such a long way to like alleviate some of the nerves that go into having sex with someone. Whether this is like your first time having sex or your bajillionth time having sex with that same partner, I think there's always like a level of nerves and anticipation that go along with it, right? Because in a way, you are trusting this person with whatever level of your body that you are comfortable with. There's a lot of that comfortability as well. It's not just being comfortable with each other, but also comfortable with yourself in that moment. And that goes a long way also in having those conversations.
You kind of triggered a thought for me too, which like people have different levels of comfort with their own bodies and different
Mhm.
levels of like security with their own bodies. And I part of it too for them is that they might have issues with their own body and they're not necessarily comfortable exposing all of their body. Not everybody's coming from the same position, and different people have different things that they're insecure about, and that's
Mhm.
okay, or that they're not comfortable with, and that's okay. And you can also still be doing certain things that you want to do and also be accommodating to that for both parties, and you can find ways that you still feel comfortable with whatever you're showing and whatever's going on, while also still holding the boundaries that you need to hold for you to feel safe. I think that we've talked about a lot of different concepts here today and like kind of gone into the basics of like
Mhm.
some of these roles, the language we use. But
Yeah.
that's what we're here to do. And I think we'll continue to have more conversations like this and just very, casual, us chatting.
Yeah, I'm not
And
gonna
we want to hear from you guys too. Like this is a conversation between us and you as well. And we're all learning as we go as well. And so if you have, ideas, you want to hear other conversations or have topics in mind, we'd love to hear them. We'd love to maybe make an episode about it or include it in an episode. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely let us know.
You can find us on all of our socials at Consent Talk.
We hope you enjoyed. This is how most of our FaceTimes go, honestly. And so we're really glad that we could include you into the conversations we have and hopefully inspire you to start your own.
I think
Consent
that's a
talk out.
good wrap. Good wrap,
Peace
guys.
out.
Good job.